Saturday, February 7th, 2015. Danny Hauger here with you on a brand new edition of Danny Hauger Podcast. Today featuring a special edition interview with the legendary voice of NBA Jam, one of the most iconic sports video games of all time. We'll visit with Tim Kitzrow about the success of that game, how he came to be associated with the voice of that game, and so many other classics from the 2000s, continuing today, the 1990s, and early on in his career, how he came to Midway. It's a really great listen. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, listen, don't forget that I am also a musician. My album Sleepy Kitten is still on iTunes and Amazon until the end of March, when my new album, which I am slating with the working title If I Grow Up, will come out, and it will be distributed globally, worldwide, and on iTunes and Amazon for your buying and purchasing convenience. Hey, if $10 is a little too much to shell out for an album called Sleepy Kitten with my cat Olivia on the cover, I know it's cute, then you can go to Google Play. You can pick that up for $3.99. You can also support the podcast by doing whatever you feel. There's a donate link on dannyhauger.podbean.com. You can go to dannyhauger.com and click one of the links to buy a song or buy an album, giving away more than 250,000 downloads for free now, so appreciate your support. For your what to watch this week, I had to say it was the Super Bowl. It was pretty entertaining overall, considering I didn't have a dog in the fight. I really hadn't watched much football all season long. Most of the people here in the East Bay area are talking about rooting against the Seahawks because of the way they dealt with the San Francisco 49ers in the past. And I think the watch of the week was Richard Sherman's face, if you watched it in slow motion, after they had a decidedly unfavorable outcome to the game in the last closing minutes with the interception from the New England Patriots. So that's the watch of the week. As to what to listen for, there's a new NPR Invisibility podcast, and that's not really the name of it. So you're going to have to search for it. I think it's Invisibilia. I don't know. I heard it from Scott Mosier on Smodcast. Anyways, that's a reference from a podcast, from a podcast, from a podcast, inside your dream. And going on to the future now, because we're 2 minutes into this outstanding edition. Looking forward to St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2015. I will be out performing live. That's right, the first 2015 performance in the East Bay, except for a wedding, which you wouldn't have known about. It is going to be a public one at Lone Tree Country Club in Antioch, California. It's going to be Tuesday, March 17th, 2015. Celebrating St. Patrick's, I'll be playing some of my favorite Irish hits, which I will have to discover what those are very soon. From 6 to 9 p.m., it'll be an acoustic set, and I look forward to meeting with you there, and looking very much forward to getting back on stage. So we'll get to the interview with Tim Kitzrow, and we hope that you are having a great week as we are into our new condo in Martinez, what is called by many the ruby or sapphire of the East Bay. It's a new precious metal every week, and enjoying the weather wherever you are. Stay warm if you're in the East Coast, and stay dry if you're on the West Coast. This is Danny Hauger at Danny Hauger on Twitter, at DHX Music, and also at DannyHauger.com and DannyHauger.podbean.com. So grateful you're listening, and so grateful for this guy, one of my all-time favorite voices. And here's a special clip he did very recently and tagged me in, and that was pretty cool. Here is Tim Kitzrow introducing Klay Thompson's outrageous 37-point third quarter. Oh, hey, Jess.
Isn't a ruby or emerald a precious stone?
And here's Tim Kitzrow.
Takes the jumper. It's good. Two-pointer. He's heating up. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka. And from uptown to downtown, it goes through the net. With the bomb from long range. And you can't guard that. From the Waffle House, located just off the Beltway. From long range. And how many balls could a ball chucker chuck if a ball chucker could chuck balls?
That's too good. Here's my interview with Tim Kitzrow.
Mark Sanchez, now an elite quarterback.
He's on fire!
Aaron Rodgers, a little overrated.
No good!
Head fake!
Nolan! He seals it. He goes down. And he swishes that one home for two. James firing. Nothing but net for three. Nice pass. Kaboom! Razzle-dazzle. No good. Controls the rebound. Oh, he just got a mouthful. And he punches it through the iron for two. That'll fire your team up. Whoa. Too big, too strong, and too fast. He's heating up. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka.
Oh, man. Just everything all at once is so great. And you've got to take the time, if you haven't already, to understand who my next guest is by just traveling back in time with me for a moment, and I'm glad you did right there. This is Danny Hauger of the Sports Lodge, AM 830 KLAA here in Los Angeles, and a real honest honor for me this morning to talk to one of my all-time favorite voices, period, of all time. It's Mr. Boom Shakalaka himself. Tim Kitzrow is joining me right now. Tim, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Danny. Good to hear you. Thanks for calling.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I mean, I never thought I'd have the opportunity, and it's a great chance for me to catch up with you. And I've always wondered about the game NBA Jam, and it's one of my all-time favorites. I feel at times like I spent more time with you growing up than I did with my parents. And it was in a time before the convergence of media where I might have the sound turned down and listen to a podcast or listen to music. Just the TV, the old Cube TV, blaring the NBA Jam sound from the original game. And I went back and studied a little more of your history and found over 20 game credits. Like, I didn't know that was you I played for all that time in Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey, man. That was awesome stuff as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that was the day where the jukebox really, I grew up more in the 60s and 70s, and the jukebox is where we spent all our quarters. It was before video games. And so for the gaming generation, that was where their quarters went. And so in a way, it's kind of like the Satisfaction, was played 1,000 times in the jukebox. The kids from, the gaming generation in the 90s with NBA Jam, that's their hit single. And so I'm kind of like, the Mick Jagger, like that's the vocal that you remember. So it's nice that all these years later, there's nostalgia and enough interest to have brought the game back by EA, and along with NFL Blitz, my other favorite game.
And I might have automatically just giving you direct access to my debit card because I love your calls and how much it adds to the fun and the excitement of the game. This new NBA Jam, even if it had been terrible, which it's not, it is amazing, and the graphics are revamped, everything's high definition, it's sharp, it's as much fun to play as the original. It's a beautiful work. Can you tell us a little bit, Tim, about the genesis of NBA Jam and how it all began with Mark Turmel in Chicago?
Well, I'll try to give you the brief story. I was playing drums in a kind of a weekend band. I'm an actor and, going out looking for gigs. But on the weekend, we'd hang out, and some of the guys put the music in the pinball games. I don't know if you were ever a pinball guy,
sure.
But I probably did end up doing 20 titles. Started out doing Mr. Howell on Gilligan's Island. Why don't we bribe him, Gilligan, little buddy? So it started out real simply. I was making $50 an hour. It seemed like a great gig, and suddenly I get this call from Mark Turmel, and he said, I'm working on this new video game called NBA Jam. And it was just in the beginning of the great Bulls era, 92, 93. I was a huge fan. I was playing Hoop at the Y all the time. And I said, are you kidding? This is a dream come true. So, there really wasn't much voice in video games before, and certainly not a sports arcade-driven game with a, voice-driven soundtrack. So it was really kind of like being in on the ground floor as the industry was just taking off and going in that direction. So I got in there and just channeled all my love of the Bulls and pretended I was watching them during the playoffs and spit out everything I could possibly think of and improvised a lot. And years later, it seemed like there was some magic that just came out of that passion that Mark had to do the game, and the passion that I had for the NBA, for the Bulls, and for voiceover. It just all kind of came together at once.
And it really gelled together to create something that's really a timeless piece of magical video game history. Where did you come up with, is that your everyday voice amped up? How did you decide what flavor of accent that you were going to use when voicing for that game?
Well, Mark Turmel, he had a big game called Smash TV originally.
Oh, okay.
And just the idea of the genesis, how creative he is, he was just going to do a straight-ahead, like, a basketball 2-on-2 game. And he noticed that one of the guys, his programmers, had the access to this fire kind of graphic that they used in Smash TV. And as a joke, he put it on one of the players at one point. And then another guy, when they were going over the dunks, they were normal dunks. And then this one guy had us, they were jumping, 10 feet in the air. And everybody just laughed, and they were just kind of kidding around. And Mark said, do you see the way everybody's responding? Like, the higher he jumps, he goes on fire, the more fun it is. So that's where it just started to develop that over-the-top sense. So once I knew that was what the style was, it was like comic book, Batman, Superman, Crash, Pow, and superhero things. We had to amp and hype up the feeling instead of the regular, kind of NBA and what we now know is like the sim games, more realistic. So it was all going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, and it, my vision just kind of worked with Mark's vision, and together the same thing for NFL Blitz just worked. We just hit the right chord, and luckily people, as I said, spent all their life savings on it. Made $2 billion, $1 billion in the first year, NBA Jam in quarters. And if you can think of that like matched against today's ticket prices for $12 with 3D glasses, how many films, gross $500 million? and it did 1 billion around the world.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even tough to fathom. Was it technologically challenging at that point of time to have that much audio on the game? Because it was a little bit unprecedented for there to be sports talk at that time on a video game of those consoles, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo. Tell me about that.
Well, absolutely. It was, and if you go back, there was really just a handful of pages of actual dialogue. I mean, really, like most of the big hits that I heard you play in the montage up front. And then, of course, we had player names, situations, but there wasn't much to it. And we couldn't do a great depth of material, but we didn't have to compress or shrink things too much to go in that game. However, when I did the first release to the home system, I think it was Super Nintendo, I actually forget which one it was, but they had so little room that they actually both compressed my voice and started to take vowels out. So, like, instead of "he's on fire," it was on "he's on fire." And if you listen to that, everything was done as like one syllable words, and we did, I think, just 2 pages of dialogue for the entire first game. And that game, by the way, went on to sell tons of copies at $70 a pop, and made like $75 million right out of the box. And I just have to mention here with NBA Jam coming out 2 years ago. They charged $59, and the thinking was, first of all, it cost $20 million for 2 years of work to put together. It's like, making a Hollywood movie. Wow. So their thinking was, people at the arcades probably spend hundreds of dollars, so for $59, you're going to get the classic, and, they've got to make money on it. They can't, sell gumballs, and make money. So when the fans came back, though, and said, "Oh, it's not worth it," they're so savvy now. It's like the more sim and in-depth games, they go, "Well, we'll spend a bigger price on that." But for this arcade one, they demanded that it'd be lower. And what was cool is that EA listened. And last year on Fire Edition, which may even be better and more complete, the definitive version came out for $15 download. And you probably pay that in an hour in the afternoon on Jam in the old days. So it's one of the greatest deals out there in the video game industry sports lineup today. And along with that, NFL Blitz, same thing, $15. I mean, it's just incredible. We just released that January 4th, and if you've had a chance to play that, you'll see it's the same thing, authentic to the original, fast, fun, over the top. So I hope you and your listeners get a chance to check out Blitz.
Oh, man, I'll tell my fiance to clear my schedule this afternoon. I didn't even know that was on the market. And it was the same thing when I stumbled upon the new NBA Jam. And as you said, the downloadable content, which is perfect because it's always on the system for a quick load and play. It's excellent. And the value's unbelievable.
Well, let me tell you also, when you're going back to the genesis of Jam, that Mark Turmel, and for people and your listeners who don't know exactly who he is, he's essentially the Steve Jobs of the video game world. And he could have probably run Microsoft or Google or anything else. He's a genius, but he likes having fun. He's the kid that didn't want to grow up, and that's why you get such great games. It's genius with creativity, and he was brought on board by EA a couple of years ago, and then oversaw the whole re-release. So it wasn't like it was just a new group of programmers working on it. He was the guy who was watching over to make sure that it stayed true. And he headed up the Tiburon EA Studios, Madden Studios, and then was on board for NFL Blitz. So you have the mastermind behind both of these remakes. So it really, is true and authentic. And it's kind of like in the old days, the first Jam and Blitz were kind of like the classic muscle cars from the 60s. But then if you watch like Hot Rods and Pimp My Ride and everything, what they did is they took that with all the new technology and gave it more horsepower, better graphics, and it's now like the new Shelby Cobra or Camaro or Challenger. It's like the same game, but it's got more power, more teeth, and looks, real sweet. So anyone who enjoyed the original, check out the new ones and have some fun.
I highly recommend everyone should check out the new NBA Jam downloadable content, or also available at your video game store just around the corner. Let me ask you, if you put them head to head, which one do you prefer playing? Do you like the modern graphics and the high definition? Do you like the logoless jerseys and the squeaking shoes of the original?
Well, it kind of goes to what I just said, is that I love the original muscle cars, but I like the faster ones too. And it's, the nostalgia will always bring me back to the first, one, the arcade, because it's a nostalgic thing. But boy, the new one, just for me, I ended up putting, thousands of lines. I mean, that's where I really got to excel. So my content, I had more fun than you could imagine putting this new content, new one-liners, things that were completely original, for the new version. And that's where I got to, do more Sports Center kind of stuff, over-the-top commentary. And because there was no limit to the room that we could put in the game, it's really special treat. So I'd have to say the new one in the long run.
This is Danny Hauger, and I'm talking with Mr. Boom Shakalaka himself, the voice from NBA Jam and more than 20 video game credits, Tim Kitzrow. Tim, let me ask you about all of that content. How long does it take to record the game?
We usually do it in about 16 hours out in Vancouver. That's where the EA NBA Jam was recorded. And you go in and you do 4-hour sessions, consecutive days. You go back, you write, edit, and then do another session. So it's about 16 hours pretty much, and same for Blitz. So it's pretty grueling, especially when you go through all the players' names and scream at the top of your lung. And for instance, NHL Hits, which I did years ago, 17 different inflections of every player's name in the NHL. And of course, there's not like 3 vowels between all those Eastern European guys.
Right.
It was like reading the, Russian or Eastern European phone book, which was really tough for me because I wasn't as familiar with player names. But so it's a lot of work. But boy, when you get to have fun and let it rip, on the play-by-play and over-the-top stuff, it's as much fun as you can have in this business.
How many takes would you say go into each inflection?
Well, I like to be known as one-take Tim, so I'm pretty good at this point because if you start to do 2, 3, or 4 takes times 17,000 lines, you've just doubled your session. Your voice will be shot in an afternoon, so it's pretty straight ahead, one take for most part.
Aside from NBA Jam, what other title are you most proud of in your resume?
Absolutely, MLB Slugfest, made with Midway under Mark Turmel, Sal DeVita as well. That was the first time, or the second time they handed me the duties to do the entire script. I got one of the most iconic radio personalities in Chicago, Kevin Matthews. He has this great character called Jimmy Short on his show. He was a stand-up with Seinfeld and all those guys back in the day, and then he did 17 years of radio here in Chicago. So he was kind of like my Harry Carey or Ron Santo, but even crazier. If you go on YouTube, you can find a lot of clips under MLB Slugfest, Tim and Jim funny commentary. We added 70 comedic improvised load screens. So while the game is loading, instead of just having dead space, it's me and Jimmy up in the booth arguing and talking about nonsense and all kinds of things. So it was the first time just like comedy pieces were thrown into a game like that. So that one is definitely I think the best work I've done.
Another of the greats in the collection. Tim, can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? Because like you said in the new game, there's just tons of stuff, and I sit there as I'm controlling the game and I'm thinking, where did it come from?
Well, that's the interesting thing. I've my whole life I've loved comedy and improv. I went to Second City, was back there with the heyday with Chris Farley, Stephen Carell, Stephen Colbert, Tim Meadows. I mean, it was just like the best of the best. And you get sharp, and you learn to just work on your feet. So when I sit down for this, I kind of get in front of the computer. And it's kind of like going into a psychiatrist's office, and he starts showing you Rorschach photos, and so I try to picture any situation in the game. So if I'm on dunks or I'm on blocks, anything that comes to mind that I've always wanted to say, I just let it fly and type it as it goes. And so it's kind of like this, just this fun, like psychoanalysis where you do word association games, same in psychoanalysis. If I say, anything that has to do with nylon, I go, nylon, women, nylon. Like your mama's top dresser drawer, he found nothing but nylon.
Yeah.
For block shots, I'm going blocker. Like, oh, Big Papa. Like, I love it when you call me Big Blocker. I love it when you call me Big Blocker. So it's just, you just riff on a situation or a phrase or a word and look for rhymes and fun. And it's just, you can go forever. And, talking about the writing process, though, what a nightmare it can be with computers. I had the all-time computer crash after 10 hours and 500 lines for the new On Fire edition.
No.
While I was also working on Blitz, kind of like round the clock. I woke up the next morning, and the computer had the screen that said autosave will not work.
Oh.
It was lost. Even though I have a backup, it couldn't even do that. So I had to just go, okay, well, if it came from the well, I'll just go back to well, and maybe I found some new stuff, and maybe there's some of that stuff I lost that'll come out in the next game. So.
Wow, so something to look out for in the future. This is Danny Hauger and Tim Kitzrow from many, many video game credits, the verbal ink blot artist himself. Tim, I get reamed on a daily basis because of an over-energetic call from my days at Cal State Fullerton. I'd like to play one for you real quick here.
31-25, the current score. UCLA looking to trigger. The game clock's off. Stolen by Thompson! Thompson! Yeah! A layup off the steal. What a defensive stance by this team.
And I get it handed to me. We play that almost daily. We play that, and I'm wondering, because you get a lot of that excitement in the games. What do you do? What do you think about? What do you psych yourself up for? How do you come up with that tone of voice?
Well, a couple of things. One very specific thing was during the entire first NBA Jam, and then the hang time and NBA Showtime, NBC Showtime one. We did several different versions of that at the arcade and home video. I would post a picture of Scottie Pippen. I remember dunking over Karl Malone with his teeth just like gritting his elbow through the rim. And I just let that image alone, remind me of all those great moments and breakaway dunks because I was such a big Bulls fan. So that was the direct inspiration. I'm the kind of guy that, oddly enough, I ended up doing this for a career. When I was a kid, I played basketball all the time in the backyard, and I could never go in the house without, doing the last-minute play-by-call, and I had to hit 3 different shots. And Kitzrow, with time winding down, he fires, shoots, can't hit it.
Yeah, of course.
I was always screaming. Every kid does that. So that was, what a great thing to then come full circle and be able to say I make my living at doing this, what kids do in the backyard. So
right. How special is that you're the man for this and you're known for doing this? Let me ask you a question then, because you have done so much. If you could steal a line from a resume and the experience of a few people, who do you wish you could be, or who do you think, I would nail that? What kind of things are those?
Well, I think that, as I said, my Second City background, as those guys went off and got their breaks at that time, I was getting my break with NBA Jam, and although it certainly wasn't as monetarily rewarding as their things were, I ended up finding a branch in the entertainment industry, and a brand new one, which is, the video game industry has now surpassed Hollywood and the music industry,
right?
And was able to start my own career. But I still look to those guys and what they do, like Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, Will Ferrell. Those are 3 guys who have unique voices. They do all, mostly original content, and you don't mistake them for anyone, and they have off-the-wall style humor. So it's that kind of thing. It's people who've made a living being true to themselves, having their own voice, and having a unique take on things. So definitely top 3 there.
Sure. I was thinking last night when I walked into the room, television was on, someone was watching a replay of the TV show Wipeout. I'm like, Tim Kitzrow, right there. You would be perfect for coming up with the lines in between there, and you're just so creative. And I wonder, with all that excitement coming from all of those video games, who excites you in the modern NBA game or modern sports? Who excites you now, Tim?
Well, first of all, I have to say, as an announcer, if any of your fans are lucky enough to ever stream live or get the Chicago broadcast for the Bulls, Stacey King, you remember him from the championship days.
Sure.
And he's along with Neil Funk, who's one of the greatest all-time broadcasters. Those 2 are my absolute hands-down favorite announcers. And Stacey King, I better watch out because he can steal my job. He is the best, most original, funny commentator you have ever heard. He's got more great one-liners. And he just has fun, and it's a great new era to have that, as opposed to the more serious, try to be jokey, NBA announcers from some of the networks. Although I like a lot of them. In the beginning, it was always Marv Albert.
Right.
He made any game, any moment sound so electric, and he was absolutely my inspiration for that. That style. It wasn't a Sunday afternoon, in my house if you didn't hear Marv screaming, he's on fire, and Vinny the Microwave would come in from Detroit. So I definitely owe him a lot for the genesis of Jam. But as I said, with the new 2 versions, I've made it my own completely. So hopefully someday some people will be going, oh, Tim was my inspiration. I found my own voice through all that.
And Danny Hauger here with Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and many other video game voicing credits. Tim, thank you for spending so much time with us this morning. And when you're watching basketball, who do you like today? Who gives you that feeling of, does anyone match the excitement of the mid-'90s Chicago Bulls for you?
Well, I hate to be so biased, and me and my Bulls, but, he didn't become the MVP for nothing last year. Derrick Rose has that extra excitement. And the fact that he's so humble and quiet-spoken, I haven't seen a player with that kind of drive and toughness in a long time. And he is just so exciting. He's definitely my guy right now.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He is a one-man showcase. I remember watching closely a few weeks ago when they faced off with the Lakers, and he made that amazing one-hand flip shot in the lane. And that's the kind of materials that make up for a special player. Tim, final question for you this morning, and thank you for your time again. If you could speak to yourself at age 24, what would you tell yourself today?
Well, I'd probably say stop worrying about your future and, just have fun and be creative, and it'll come to you. You could, and of course, like in a time machine or Twilight Zone, if I went back then, I could say, Tim, just go to a drive-through at McDonald's, spill some hot coffee on your lap, and go, I spilled coffee, I'm suing you. Make $10 million. Something like that. I could have bought 49 cents worth of cheap pink material, put 2 holes in it, called it a Snuggie, or invented a stupid dance called a Dougie. I just yelled into a microphone, boom shakalaka. Any three of those things would have set me for life. So
and it
worked out well with the boom shakalaka.
It sure did. Tim Kitzrow, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I really appreciate the time and really your contributions, because as I said, growing up, your voice was on so often, and now with the new NBA Jam On Fire edition that you can download on your consoles, your new generation consoles, it lives on in perfect gleaming quality audio. And Tim, thank you so much for doing what you do, man. Sure.
Hey, if you got a minute, I got a new product that I'm pitching for a pharmaceutical company.
Sure, please. A pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, I'm working for a pharmaceutical company. A new drug about to come out, and I'll just read you the copy I just got from my agent.
Sure thing.
Men, do you suffer from performance anxiety? Have you lost your confidence in the paint? Having trouble getting up and staying up in the lane? Wish you could jam at home like you did when you were 20 again? Then perhaps you should ask Dr. J about Dunk It All. Yes, Dunk It All. Now with AccuLeap, guaranteed to add 6 inches of vertical to your game. Get up, stay up, and finish strong and hard at the rim with Dunk It All. For dunks lasting over 4 seconds, consult with Dr. J immediately at 1-800-BOOM-SHAKALAKA.
Beautiful.
So we'll see how that goes.
Beautiful, man. I think that's got a future. I think that's going to go through the approval testing process pretty quickly. Well, Tim Kitzrow, thank you very much. This is Danny Hauger again, sitting in the AM 830 studios, and we'll be back after this.
Yes, and Danny Hauger nails it. Boom shakalaka. Danny Hauger is on fire.
I only wish he would have been in person. That is one of my favorite clips that I've ever had recorded. Thank you, Tim Kitzrow, for taking the time to sit down with me. If you're still listening, thank you. Subscribe to the podcast at DannyHauger.podbean.com. Find me on Twitter at Danny Hauger. Or go to, wherever you want. Just Google it. It's not that hard. Hauger. Have a great week, everybody. Happy spring. Happy winter. Whatever season you are, thanks for listening. I'm Danny Hauger.